Hey guys, so before we start this episode, just gotta say one thing. I fucked up. I didn't hit record on the Zoom to start the episode for about like the first 7 or 8 minutes. I think the audio is fine enough where you could hear our guests, but there are no video. I did my best to try to fix it. Sorry, I fucked up. My bad. It happens. I'm a stupid little dickhead. I take responsibility, but the rest of the episode should be fine. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. Bye.
Hello, you're listening to Reviewing History, your comedy history podcast. I'm filmmaker and teacher Brian Rupert, joined here by
As always, Steven Bagliacco.
and
Aunt G, hi.
we're joined here by two individuals who made a tremendous mistake. We're joined here by we're joined here by Ken Widner and Mike Lynch, who have a new book out called Alcatraz: The Last Escape.
Show
Thanks
the book.
for joining us, guys.
Show the book.
Yep. It's a beautiful copy.
Let me take a look at this.
So
It is a nice book.
yeah,
It's very
The whole
professional.
thing on the show, right? You're gonna read it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Word for word.
We're gonna have a recitation.
it's a Andy Kaufman bit we're gonna
Right.
do. You guys sit here and
Hot chocolate.
yeah, free audiobook, YouTube. Just yeah.
Where's my beer?
So thanks for doing the show, guys. And you actually reached out to us. So I'm kind of curious what led you guys to finding us and wanting to talk.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
No, it's not. We're enjoyable.
What I did was I was just looking at podcasts, and obviously our book is about the Alcatraz escape, real history. Ken here is actually the nephew of John and Clarence Anglin, who are two of the escapees. They were brothers who broke out with
Right.
Frank Morris. And so when I saw reviewing history, obviously that grabbed my attention, and I reached out to you saying, hey, maybe we can do a show together and show the movie Escape from Alcatraz, and I think it's a good fit.
Would you say
We're all about anytime we can promote the story, because I know we're going to be talking about the actual movie and how far off it really was from what actually happened. So, we're going to be able to give you a little bit of inside information into what went wrong, what they didn't do right,
that's interesting because
actually kind of set the story straight on some things.
that's interesting because in the research I was kind of doing to prepare for this, it seemed to me like the movie was fairly accurate, but you're going to tell me now that it's a pack of lies?
Probably the most fiction movie that was pertaining Alcatraz.
Okay.
If you totaled all of it together, maybe 10% was correct.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! So
That's low.
yeah, we're
That's
gonna tear this movie down.
So here's my first question.
I feel really bad. I feel like it's almost sacrilegious for me to tear down Alcatraz since I'm so related to it. And here is a guy who did he really did a really good movie. But I will tear it down if need be.
Have you ever met your uncles? There's my first question.
There were three brothers that were involved in this bank robbery that landed them in federal penitentiary. I did meet one of them. The other two, if I have met them, and it's very possible that I have, I didn't know it was them.
Mm-hmm.
But, at some point in time, I do hope to meet their kids, and if their wives are still alive, meet them. So
Do you know where they are?
I do know the location of where they grew up, or not grew up at. They married and had children at. So
That's very
we do know
interesting.
the general location.
Yeah, and I'm maybe about a third of the way into the book, and this isn't a spoiler for the book. It opens talking about the escape itself, and then where I am, it's kind of all the backstory of the Anglin brothers and Frank Morris, who's played by Clint Eastwood in the movie. So it's interesting, like where I kind of got up to in the book before watching the movie, because their relationship is way more fleshed out in the book, and it even hints at what happens after very early into your book. You know, you don't kind of withhold it for the end.
Right. Well, and two, you know, a lot of people, like, I know we haven't jumped into the movie part of it yet, but, you know, a lot of people believe that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers only met for the very first time when it got to Alcatraz, and that's far from the truth.
Well, they seem to have a rapport in the
way
movie.
before that, so it's, you know, that's just one of the items that we can talk about.
Yeah, that was definitely something I found interesting. Where in the movie, it's like, oh, they kind of know each other, but like when you get more information in your book, it's like, no, they were childhood friends. Like they grew up together, basically. You know.
Well, they definitely spent time in prison together, in Florida prisons. So it is definitely not. Okay, we're going to show up at Alcatraz, and hey, who are you again? The Anglin brothers, okay? Because that's really kind of how the movie plays out. Is like they're sitting down at the dinner table, and it's the first time I'm meeting you, and so let's escape together.
What else are we gonna do?
Exactly.
All right, so we'll start the movie, and anything you have that you want to chime in, just let us know, and we're on it.
Let me check something.
Brian,
I need to check something.
have you're familiar with the movie? You've seen it many times?
Yes, I saw the movie one time before.
Oh, really? I thought you were a big fan.
I'm not a giant fan of the movie. I've seen it once, and I thought it was pretty good. My co-host, you guys had never seen it, right?
This is the first time I've
It's the
seen
first
it.
time.
And I'm sure you, Mike and Ken, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you even need to watch it for the show, or like you know it like the back of your hand? Where
I've seen it multiple times. I know exactly what the movie's about.
No, although I did visit Alcatraz way back in 1981, and when we were going through the cells, they showed us the cell that they used for the movie because they had painted it to make it look new and brand new for the film. So that was kind of interesting where they actually filmed that part.
Yeah, it was only 2 years after, so I assume everything was still.
It was still pretty new. Yeah, because they kind of dressed up the prison to make it not look so old.
Now, here's a question: was the cell they filmed in the actual cell that the escape happened in?
No.
Okay.
That was another cell. They had plenty of other cells to choose from.
Escape from Alcatraz. So the movie begins. Clint Eastwood, he's on a boat, and
Well, they're bringing him to prison.
they're bringing him to prison. He's on the ferry.
Let's talk about Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a prison, obviously. It's in the
Yeah.
middle of San Francisco Bay. It's on an island.
Yep.
It's got 6 guard towers that are manned with men with rifles, and it's got 20-foot barbed wire fences.
Didn't seem like that from the movie.
Beyond that, there is San Francisco Bay is known to have sharks in it. Right?
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
1 mile
It
from the
is.
island is the city of San Francisco.
And you don't want to go there.
Well, certainly not now. 2 miles from the island is Angel Island, and beyond that,
Yep.
another mile past Angel Island is a town that I can't remember the name of. It starts with an M. Do you guys know offhand?
It's Marion.
Marion, yes.
Marion.
And that is supposedly where our guys escaped to, as far as I know. But how do you feel
But
about that
that's
statement?
not true.
No,
Okay.
no,
Oh.
it's a whole nother story.
Yep. That is
The other
that
thing you
is
have to
the
remember too is the
direction
water is
that
real
they-
cold in the bay.
That's
It's
the
around 50
direction that-
degrees.
That's the direction that they wanted the authorities to believe they went in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And to be honest with you, reading the book will definitely describe a lot of the information that we're going to kind of spit out and
Yeah.
some things. But that was the original plan. The original plan was to go to Angel Island, but at some point in time, the plan changed, and they just continued on with allowing the story to be told that that's what happened. So.
as far as the film's concerned, he's being brought in the middle of the night, which seems odd to me.
A little bit.
That's kind of odd. I don't think they actually brought prisoners in at night.
It's a little
I mean, that would be very, very rare.
And alone. Like,
yes.
Anytime I've ever seen, people being brought into prison, it's always a large group. Yeah. Why is Clint Eastwood so special? He gets private boat service.
High IQ.
Because he's Clint Eastwood, you know?
Well, actually, Whitey Bulger is another. He's not in the movie at all, but he played a significant role in the escape, and he was very good friends with Frank Morris, and he wrote some letters to Ken, which Ken still has, and he does talk about Frank Morris was sent by himself, as was Whitey Bulger. So that did happen. Although you can look at old photographs where they used to actually bring him by train cars. They put train cars on boats, and they transport them in the cars so they couldn't escape, and then drop them off on the island. So some were done in groups, some were done
kind of
individually.
early on.
Yeah, that was years earlier.
But an interesting story about Frank Morris was that Frank and Whitey Bulger left Atlanta Federal Penitentiary at the exact same time, and they had a bet. Whitey bet him that he would be there before he would, that he would arrive at Alcatraz before Frank would, and they flew Whitey Bulger in a plane with two marshals, and he actually got there months ahead of Frank Morris. They took Frank on a train, and he wound up going through, I think, Leavenworth and then another prison before he actually wound up there. But yeah, that was a kind of a funny story.
Now, Alcatraz...
They had a bet who's going to get there first.
Now, Alcatraz itself, it's a federal penitentiary. So regardless of where you commit a crime in the country, if it's of a certain degree or if you've committed a certain amount, they're going to send you to Alcatraz.
That's actually incorrect. Alcatraz was a federal prison that supposedly the only way that you could get there is that you had to be in another prison. And you were either a troublemaker or a flight risk or something that went on. And the prison warden would have to go before a board and say, hey, I want to remove this guy from my prison. I want him to go to Alcatraz, because it was supposed to be the prison of the last resort. Right. You didn't go anywhere else after Alcatraz. If you were a troublemaker, you probably wound up dead. So it was like, but there was only 2, maybe 3 people that wasn't the way that they got to Alcatraz. And in the book, you'll read about one of the mobsters that actually helped in the escape. He was sent directly to Alcatraz. He never even went to another prison.
Mm-hmm.
So for like wardens and prison people, it's a prison of dreams. But for the prisoners, it's a ship of nightmares, putting them in chains.
Back to America.
Yeah.
Even that's not actually true. I hate to bust your bubble every time you do that.
Show of inaccuracy. Sorry.
But for as far as like Whitey used to tell me in letters that he actually, when he was setting in other federal prisons at this time, he was in Leesburg, Florida. He said he dreamed of being back in Alcatraz because it was such a peaceful place. The food was excellent. Even though they were confined in some little small cell.
You got a private cell.
The prisoners actually had a lot of freedom. They just couldn't get off the island.
Right. That makes sense.
And Whitey would tell me that a lot of times they would go out into the yard and they would sit on the steps, and you could actually see downtown San Francisco in the wharf area. And he said many times they could actually smell hot dogs cooking, or they could hear music playing and people, cheering and dancing in clubs and stuff. And it was kind of now that would be a torture to me. Like you can look over and you can see a beer and a hot dog, but you can't have one. So
unless you're Rick,
that would be torture.
It very much reminds me of the setup from The Great Escape, if you remember that movie.
Yes,
oh yeah, love that movie.
Yeah,
great film.
Kind of putting all the bad eggs in one basket and leaving it's an escape-proof place.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's talked about, I think it was from Whitey, that when you're in the prison and like Ken said, you're looking out you can see San Francisco. It's within arm's reach. That the inmates, all they thought about all the time was just how to escape, how to get off the island, how to get out of there. because it just seems so, all you have to do is get out of the cell, get into the water, and swim for it. But obviously very few inmates ever tried that, but that's all they ever thought about was, how can I get off the rock? How can I escape?
How do you feel about The Rock? Speaking of the nickname there,
The movie? The
Sean
Michael Bay.
Sean Connery movie.
Oh, that's absolutely true. That really happened.
I love that movie.
That to me was better than the Escape from Alcatraz.
That movie kicks ass. I mean,
It's more believable that the prison got bombed by like an F-16.
Ed Harris is trying to release a bioweapon.
Yeah.
Breaking into Alcatraz.
So, right away, right when they get to the prison, and this is one of my favorite things about the movie, which I find so funny. The movie makes a point to, because, everybody, like, you hear prison and you're a dude, you go prison rape. It's like the thing that comes in everybody's mind. They make a point to be like, nobody rapes Clint Eastwood. Like, the gay dude is like flirting with him right away. And the movie's like, no, Clint's not putting up with that.
They escort him in completely nude.
And what is always caught me was so funny when I watch the movie is when he's walking down the cell at night, the cell house, and he's naked. And I'm going, Clint Eastwood, the first naked and afraid on Alcatraz. It's like, how can this not be, paired up with the Naked and Afraid show somehow?
I think everyone else, though, is more afraid because Clint is naked.
Right.
They're like, oh my God, this is too much man.
That would be a good thing. I don't think we ever found out if that was true, if they paraded him down the middle of everybody naked, but it could be. Who knows? But that could actually be one of the pieces that's true.
Yeah.
It either breaks you or it just asserts dominance immediately.
Yeah, but I can't. Now one thing Whitey did tell me that there was. Alcatraz was like the home of the troublemakers. So he said you had rapists in there, you had people that were really, really bad, and there were people who got raped in Alcatraz.
You mean there weren't nice old men painting portraits?
That's not a far-fetched, thing to believe that could have actually happened.
Yeah.
What was I going to say?
Yeah, the movie kind of makes it. None of them, other than the evil gay guy, none of them seem like terrible people in the movie.
Right.
They
like,
play a
you
sympathy
kind of
angle.
root for all the criminals.
Yes.
Over the evil warden.
Which you really shouldn't.
He was very mean to the painting guy.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys before we get any further on. What is Frank Morris in prison for? Do we know?
Bank robbery.
Was he involved with the Anglers? The Anglins?
No, he was not involved with the Anglin brothers. He had actually the Anglin brothers. That was their first bank robbery. I believe Frank Morris had robbed multiple banks before.
Yeah,
I don't believe that was his first one. But what got sent him to Alcatraz, and this is something I wish I had asked Whitey Bulger, but I guess I didn't think about it. Whitey was being sent to Alcatraz from Atlanta because of an escape attempt that he was involved in. And Frank Morris, who was actually right across the cell, the block. I mean, they could see each other.
Whitey Bulger and Frank Morris.
And he was actually sent to Alcatraz undoubtedly because he was involved in the escape too. I don't know if he was involved in the same escape that Whitey was participating in, or if he was doing something else, but it got him sent to Alcatraz at the exact same time.
Just speaking on Whitey Bulger, I didn't realize he was so connected with all of this because obviously he's not in the film.
He's very connected with it.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
He told me stuff in letters. We became very good friends. I've got 17 letters that we corresponded when he was in the Coleman in Leesburg, Florida. He started sharing things with me, and he said, "I'm going to tell you things that I've never told anyone about Alcatraz." And he found a connection with me because he was very, very good friends with Frank Morris. and he became very good friends with John and Clarence.
Mm-hmm.
The Anglin
And so the Anglin brothers, right? And so he shared with me things that, like I said, he has never shared before with anyone else.
I'm sure you guys spoke about much more important things, but did he see Johnny Depp's portrayal of him in Black Mass?
He did, and he was not very happy.
No!
No, he did not like Johnny Depp whatsoever. And in fact, I think he even said one time if he had the opportunity, he would have slapped him. No, he did not. He did not care for Johnny Depp.
How long ago did he pass now? It's been about 5 years, something like that, right?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's probably coming up. I don't remember. I think it was 2019, 2000.
Yeah, something like that.
2020 when he passed. I'd have to go back and I don't remember when he passed. I started corresponding with him in 2016, and we wrote pretty much up to like early 2019, 18.
Now, was that to write this book? Your
No,
original correspondence?
The way I actually got to know him, he actually started corresponding with my mom. We were out at Alcatraz in 2012 for the 50th anniversary, and he sent through a messenger a letter to my mom because, like I said, he had this connection with her brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to write a screenplay, which actually that's what the book is based upon, is a screenplay that I originally started. And so I was like, I really want some more information from someone who was there, who knew my uncles. And so I asked him, could I write him? He was like, absolutely, and he even told me anytime I got a letter from you, I knew it was from, a connection with his friends. And he actually started telling me, don't call me James anymore. All my friends call me Jim. And so he had that connection. He said he would drop everything in the middle of the night and write me back anytime I wrote it.
Wow.
So we became, I'm going to say friends. I mean, how do you become friends with a killer like that? I knew what he was, and I knew what he had done.
Right.
But
you didn't have to worry about him killing you.
No, but I will say this. I told him one time about this person that we thought was treating the family bad, and he told me, he said, I don't know if I should have said that to him, because he said he better be glad I'm not out, because he wouldn't want to meet me in a dark alley. I was like, oh God.
I guess it's a good friend to have. Useful.
Just to let you know, he died in October of 2018.
Okay. So not
2018.
6 years ago.
So I guess you never had the opportunity to speak with Alan West.
I personally didn't.
Is he still alive?
But now I will tell you why he didn't
died.
have a whole lot of respect for Alan West.
Yeah, Whitey talks a lot about Alan West and never in complimentary. He just thought he was a weasel. He was weak. He, couldn't be trusted. He was a big racist, kind of a
Frank Morris
hothead.
did not like him at all.
And Whitey's from Boston. He's not putting up with racism.
No. I
Alan,
think the only people that actually liked Alan West was probably John. John spent time with him in other prisons. Clarence might have been there with them. So the Anglin brothers knew West from previous prisons. I know for a fact that Frank Morris did not like him at all.
Okay. And Alan West, for those that don't know, it's the guy who doesn't make it at the end of the movie who gets left behind. Correct?
Well, that's not his name in the film.
He backs out.
It's based on him.
He chickens out.
He
knows, he's warned. In our book, you'll find the real story, but he was warned not to go.
Okay.
Just so everyone's aware,
he backed out for a reason.
the film is essentially the Alan West version of events, because that's where this story comes from. Is from him speaking to the
No, you want the real story of where it came from?
Yeah,
I'd love to.
So in 2012, we had the opportunity as we were doing this shoot with some newspapers, and Richard Tuggle, who wrote the screenplay that became the movie, was actually there. And I started talking to him, actually me and my brother. And we asked him, we said, well, where did you get the inspiration to write this? Mm-hmm. Well, Lord Mahone, he was out doing a tour on Alcatraz, and he went by the bookstore and he saw this book. He was a kind of a down and out, he was trying to get into the business of screenplays, break into the business. And so he was like, I don't have any ideas for any movies. And he saw a book that somebody else had written. And so he picked the book up and he started reading it and he goes, I think I can make a movie out of this. And I said, well, and I even asked him, I said, well, why did you make Frank Morris the star? And he goes, well, I only had one actor and, I couldn't make one of the brothers because that would have been weird. So we made Frank Morris the star of the show.
Yeah. I mean, it works
so
for the movie.
It has nothing to do with anything factual.
I guess let's get back to the film.
Yeah.
Okay.
He meets. So in my notes, because at this point I noticed that everyone in the prison was white. So I wrote a question to myself: was the prison segregated? And then the next scene, he's meeting English in the library, who's a black dude.
Yes, he's the king of the black dudes, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, that character was actually Bumpy Johnson. They changed it for the film.
Okay.
And actually Alcatraz was segregated the entire time it was open, that the black inmates were kept in one part of the prison and the white and Hispanics were kept elsewhere, because if they put them together, there were issues that the prison wanted to avoid.
Okay, so
you got to remember this
prison.
is. Oh yes, you got to remember this is the early '60s. There was very much segregation going on.
See, it's interesting because I could see you making the case back then where it's like, yeah, they're not going to do it for problems, and I could also see them making the case where it's a prison, we don't give a shit. You guys are going to deal with this.
And actually, one of the inmates that was there at the time also was the famous mobster Mickey Cohen. And Mickey Cohen and Bumpy Johnson were actually maybe not friends, but they were friendly with each other because they were both from New York. Cohen was Jewish, Johnson is black. So they both could commiserate about, prejudice and racism against them. And so they used to hang out together in the exercise yard, which was not done. But they both kind of like, hey, you know what? We don't care what other people think, because they were both very powerful men and people left them alone despite sort of flying in the face of protocol of the time.
When you have power, I guess, you can get away with a lot.
That's true.
So he meets English's backstory. And what'd you say the real guy's name is? Bubsy Johnson?
Bumpy Johnson.
Bumpy Johnson. Okay.
Bumpy Johnson,
is that the same backstory as Bumpy in real life, where like he killed a guy in self-defense and went to jail? 3 guys in self-defense.
Well, he was a mob guy in Harlem, and there was a mob war between him and Dutch Schultz. So they both killed a lot of people, and he was in the heroin trade, and yeah, he was a bad guy. And I think there's a show, I think it's on HBO or one of the cable channels, called Godfather of Harlem, and that's about Bumpy.
Mm-hmm. Ah, okay.
No
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yep.
So they just play the sympathetic role when it's like, no, he was a monster.
Well, these are men in prison. They're all criminals.
Interesting fact about the escape was all of the escapees' cells backed up to the African American cells. So anytime they went into the corridor to do any kind of work, or as they were chipping through, all these African American prisoners on the other side could hear them. And in fact, they had to. This is something you're reading in the book, but they had to have some pressure put on to them from Bumpy Johnson to keep quiet, because any one of them could have gone to a guard or to someone and say, hey, there's somebody going up, an escape going on, and they would have got their time reduced. I mean, you're talking about how the white people were treated in Alcatraz. They didn't have access to lawyers or very few visitors. Well, just imagine what was happening to the black prisoners. Mm-hmm. They were getting even worse treatment. And so for all these black inmates that could have easily helped themselves, decided, hey, we're just going to keep our mouth shut and let this thing play out, it's pretty amazing. It really kind of lends to what we portray and say in the book, that they were told not to say anything.
Mm-hmm. Huh. I mean, snitches get stitches, right? It's a classic phrase.
You're right. You're right. And two, add on to that, they know that West, who is participating in this, is a racist and really rants, just busts their chops every time he's around, to the point that Morris and the Anglin brothers had to go to him and, almost pretty much Morris threatened him with, hey, you don't shut up, I'm going to do you in.
Yeah.
But he couldn't do that because he needed him because, that's how they dug and got out in the back, is one would watch while the other would work.
Simply because he was next door in the next cell over.
Yeah, exactly right. So it was important that that Frank and Wes got along as much as they could. But hey, I'm going to tell you something. If Wes, and I'm pretty sure that John filled him in on what was going to happen to him once they got into the water. And I think that's the reason why he decided, you know what, I think I'll just pretend that I can't get out of my cell.
I couldn't make it, guys.
I'm sorry. I'll catch the next boat.
So Clint Eastwood gets a job in the movie delivering books. Do you know if that's real?
No, that's not real.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
Okay.
So much.
But if that's kind of the explanation for how they were able to make these paper mache heads and whatnot. So is there any insight you have in how that got done?
Well, so here's a good story that will go into the movie. Frank Morris did not even make his own head. Clarence made his head. Frank Morris actually didn't even get included onto the escape until after John and Clarence had almost broke through their cell.
You mean he wasn't the mastermind?
Wes is the one who went to Frank and said, hey, we need to include Frank Morris because I need someone to watch for me as I dig. And that's how he got included on it. So, like I said, this movie makes it sound like
he's the genius.
Morris is the one who came up with the idea of going through the cell, and he's the one who made the heads, when actually it's just the opposite.
And actually, there's an FBI report that chronicles a lot of information, and as you pointed out, a lot of it came from Alan West because he was the one that didn't make it, and so which is actually great because there's a lot of inside information in the report that we wouldn't have known about. And one of the things the report does say is that John was the leader of the four that were trying to break out. He came up with the plan. He came and then started.
He was the first one out the back of his cell.
Right. Yeah. He dug out of his cell first, and then that's where they used to hide the head and the materials, their digging tools and so forth in between the cell blocks and the utility corridor.
And this was one of my favorite details when I was in the book. They had done the paper mache trick to break out of juvenile halls as children.
Yes, they did.
So this was in their repertoire.
Well, they actually, when they were, we would go back into talking about how they lived. They were a very, very poor family. The house that they lived in, that they built in Ruskin, Florida, was a 4-room house, no electricity, no plumbing, no windows. Well, they had windows, but they didn't, they had shutters. There wasn't anything covering them. And anytime and there's 14 kids.
Wow.
So 7 boys and 7 girls. And anytime they wanted to sneak out of the house, they would take their oldest sister's wig head, that she had a wig, and they would lay it in the bed with the hair, and they would cover it up because if their dad, my grandfather, who was very strict, if he ever caught them, it was the belt. So they knew to fool him when they wanted to sneak out. So that was actually something they did as kids, and even when they were in juvenile reform school, they actually would perform that exact same trick.
Yeah, so that was a detail which I love because I think you could do the Alcatraz version, honestly, with the book version that you guys are presenting, like the more accurate one. And I think you get kind of a more almost fulfilling emotional story because you're getting these little details of them as children, which pay off later,
Mm-hmm.
So, so I think, and even watching this, knowing the real information, it enhanced it severely.
Huh.
Well, and you go into the FBI files when you start reading about all of the tools that they created that aided them in this escape, like a homemade flashlight, all these other wrenches and a periscope. Even the FBI was just blown away because they would say the skill that they used out of making stuff out of nothing was really kind of relates back to, like you said, when John and Clarence were kids, they didn't have any money, so they couldn't, any toys or anything they had, they created it out of pretty much whatever they could find. So that lends in, like you said, it's things that they experienced in their early life that carried forth and actually helped them in this escape.
Wow.
Getting back to the movie, I think we need to talk about the character Wolf, the rapist.
Sure.
Okay, the gay
the attempted gay rapist.
Yes.
Do you guys have anything on him? Is he fiction? Is he
He's fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now I will say, I did ask Michael Esslinger one time when I was writing the screenplay. I wanted someone who was really, a bad guy that I could use, and he did share with me there was somebody he said pretty much like him, but that wasn't his name.
Okay.
But the punishment that gets doled out to Clint Eastwood and the Wolf character, where they're putting the D block dark room, is that seems like something that wouldn't be allowed in American prisons. But what can you tell us about that, if anything?
The solitary?
Yeah, the solitary, just in the
Well,
dark.
without
Oh, that is absolutely true. That part is true. I mean, you can, if you've visited Alcatraz, you can go visit those cells and they'll let you go in there and close the door, and it is totally dark. And
they would make you go in naked.
Really?
Yeah. And they would hose you down to get you cold and just to make your life more miserable. And you just slept on the floor,
sitting in a puddle.
And that was the extreme punishment for them. If you got into a fight or tried to escape or were causing some severe problems, they'd throw you in the hole for about a week or two, depending on, the severity of your whatever you did. And the inmates hated it. And sometimes, there were stories that, when they were there for long enough, they just started screaming because they had to get out, and they just, it was just so torturous for them. So few inmates repeated that experience.
Yeah, it's total darkness. I've been in one.
Wow.
That's terrifying.
It's mentally breaking.
Yeah, it's definitely terrifying. I was like, okay, when they shut the door, I mean, they told me, put your hand in front of your face. You literally could not see your hand. And I was like, okay, please open the door. I'm not claustrophobic, but
how long you last?
I'm ready to get out.
You'll get that one guy who's like a little masochist, he just kind of enjoys it.
If I go on the tour with my wife, shut the door, just go away a couple minutes.
Or it's like the Gene Wilder movie, the prison movie, where they're trying to break him because they want him to do the Bronco riding. If you ever saw the movie, and they put him in a place that's like the hole, and when they come to get him out, he's begging for more time there because he's really enjoying it.
All right. So he's delivering books. We meet the guy who's painting in the yard. Doc. Is he based on a real guy?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. But now the painting is real because John and Clarence actually did paint portraits while they were in the prison, which is how they used or got the flesh tone paint to paint on the heads. And also is how they got the paint when they painted the fake vent covers. So the painting piece of it was true, but it was just done by the Anglin brothers and not this fictional.
Right, there's not a random dude in the yard with a stick that could be turned into
Did
a
they
shank.
paint a picture of the warden that he found unflattering and then lost his shit?
No. John painted his girlfriend and her sister, which is awesome paintings. I mean, the artwork is amazing. And then Clarence painted a rock scene, the rock, with water crashing up onto it. And so they were very good artists. We were blown away as how good the artwork is.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because painting the warden from memory like that has to be very difficult and impressive.
Right. Well, you find some inspiring.
Yeah, you got a lot of time.
Well, one other little tidbit, getting back to the dummy heads, because as Ken mentioned, they were, they were masking what they were really doing with the paint by, painting, either portraits or landscape. But Clarence was the barber in the prison, which is not in the movie. So he was cutting hair of the inmates. And so he was taking the hair and hiding it, like in his handcuffs or in his pocket. And he was bringing it back to the cells. And then, of course, they use that for the dummy heads to make them more realistic. So, again, just you're really thinking very creatively of getting everything that they needed to make the, the dummy heads look as realistic as possible. And when we were doing research for the book, we came across an interview that a guard had made, and they asked him specifically was because they didn't use the dummy heads once, because the movie shows that, the night of the escape, that's when they used the dummy heads, and then they, scurried up to the top and made their way to the water. Well, they had actually done it over a period of many weeks because they were going to the top of the cell block. That was sort of their work area where they were making the raft and the life vests. And, when they would steal things that they needed for the escape, they'd hide it on the top. And so it was many, many times that they, used the dummy heads to make it look like they were sleeping. Well, the guard said that they looked real, that when you walked past it, there was somebody there, there was a head there was hair, there was, they were using their clothes to make it look like there was a body under the covers. And he said you couldn't tell the difference.
And with the added bonus of it being dark.
Yeah.
That's that you brought up the time that it's taking to pull all this off. Obviously, this is a very elaborate scheme to get out, and I don't think the movie does a great job of portraying exactly how much time and effort is being put into this. We're talking months and months of work. Carving out the vent, covering it up every time they're not carving the thing with paint and rubber cement and things like that. And then, of course, they have to get through this maintenance shaft that's behind the wall, right? Climb up on to like the second floor. It's at least that's how it appeared to me.
Third level.
Third floor.
Yes.
And then through the roof, through those bars. And how did they get through that seal at the top to get out of that vent? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that they did was they had cemented all of the vents on the top except for one. And that was the one that they eventually got out of. Well, for some reason, they didn't cement it, but they put steel bars across the bottom of it. And what the brothers did, one of the things that they did that's also very ingenious, they created what's called a bar spreader. Do you know what that is?
No.
Basically, you have like
bars.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a bar spreader.
And you just have like a screw and something that goes into it, and you unscrew it and it pushes out. So it's using the force of unscrewing something, and so they use that to spread the bar. And then they reached inside, and then they cut the bolts. It was like there was like a housing for the top of the air vent, and they couldn't cut through the bars because that was hardened steel, but the bolts were not hardened steel, so they cut the sides off, and they were able to take the flashing off to get to the roof.
Any idea what kind of tool you would use to cut those bolts, or how do you get a tool?
Well, they found files and cutting tools.
They had found some Wes actually. When he was working behind the in between the cells, that little corridor, he actually came across a set of hacksaw blades and files that had been left there years beforehand. And they had been covered up, and it was dust and everything all over them. So when he's in there and he finds them, he leaves them right where they're at. They happen to be very close to John's cell where he digs out. So he goes and he tells John about it. Well, that's when really they started kind of, okay, well, we can go out the back of the cell. Now we have these hacksaws and we have these files. That's the very first thing John went for as soon as he got through the back of the cell. Is he located those files and those hacksaws, and they use those to cut the bolt itself.
Quite a lucky find.
Very lucky. It's almost kind of like all these stars lined up just perfectly for this escape. Like
that's one of the values of Alan West, because he was sort of like a handyman. He had sort of general skills, and so he would kind of go roam around the prison and just sort of fix things and take care of things. And later on in the story, when they have to go to the top of the cell block to be sort of their work area, it was Alan West who went to the guards to talk about painting the top of the cell block, because he had done it months before in another part of the cell block where they would paint it from time to time, because it's sort of like the Golden Gate Bridge. If you've ever seen the Golden Gate Bridge, they're constantly painting it because of the salt air. And they had to do the same thing at Alcatraz, the salt air, which was made the cement kind of soft that was easy to dig. And that does come out in the movie. He was the one that requested painting the top of the cell block for the real reason of hiding and working, for everything that they needed to escape.
Sure.
So he did prove a valuable service to the other three, because without him, they couldn't have done it.
No. The movie kind of portrays him as almost like an innocent guy with some minor crimes. He's a car thief in the movie. And then
he is a car thief. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of got a bad deal because some prison warden didn't like him and sent him to Alcatraz. Is that kind of match up with the truth?
I think he actually had a couple of escape attempts, which I think is what actually landed him there. and he actually got into a lot of if I remember what Whitey said, that he got into a lot of trouble and fights in other prisons with black prisoners. Mm-hmm. And that's one of like I said, you either went to Alcatraz because you were a flight risk, or
violent.
You were a troublemaker, or you were a high profile person, and they wanted to make an example of you.
Well, that is famously where Al Capone died, right?
Well, yes, that's Al Capone was definitely in Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm. And they have that joke in the movie where Clint Eastwood runs into a guy and they're talking.
Litmus.
Yeah, Litmus. And he's like, who is that? And they're like,
that's Al Capone.
That's Al Capone.
I'm Al Capone.
Yeah. And they never really in the movie answer if it is Al Capone or not. But
no, it wasn't Al Capone. He was already dead by then.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
He was just making a joke.
Yeah.
All right. So they want to take the painting away from Dalton, Doc.
Yeah.
And Doc loses it and gets a hatchet and just hacks off his own fingers.
Yeah. And then we don't know what happens to him.
He's gone. He's out of the movie.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood
Well, they started nicknaming him Stubby. It was no longer Doc anymore. It was Stubby. Stubby Doc.
It's so weird because I'm sitting there like, oh, they're trying to make you're supposed to feel bad for Doc, but we don't know why he's there. He easily could have killed 10 children. We wouldn't know.
Oh, he's
a sensitive painter,
So it's right after this when Clint Eastwood in the movie discovers a roach going into the vent. Now, I know you guys said it's really the Anglin brothers. Was it a roach that led them to this discovery? Is this movie?
No. Actually, Alan West is he's the one who, according to his testimony, kind of chipped away and found that there was him and John had already been talking about escape. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when he went to John and told him about the vent cover that he had discovered, he said that John was already aware of it, and that I can tell you something. John was planning that escape when he was riding out to Alcatraz on their boat. He was a planner, mm-hmm. and he was already planning to get out. And when they got there, him and West hooked up. West told him about how easy it was to chip away. And then I think that's when John, because originally him and John thought they could go through the front of their cell and try to go out that way. And they were like, well, that can't happen. That would never happen that way. And so that's when they said, well, we can go out the back of the cell. And then when they started discovering the vent, that's when they said, okay, let's see if we can get out the back of it. And they both started kind of digging away at it. And then I think Clarence actually joined in, and that's how it happened. It wasn't this roach.
This mythical roach.
Yeah. Mr. Jingles.
I think guys in the cell immediately are just trying to find a way out right from the get-go. I don't think the roach needs to lead the way.
I wasn't thinking about it, but look at that critter go. So they have a Clint Eastwood one-liner where he doesn't speak much in the movie, but he has a couple of Clint Eastwood quips. So he's reading the Bible, hiding from the guard after recently discovering, and the guard's like, "You still reading that Bible, Frank?" And he's like, "Bible's digging up all sorts of new doors."
Opening it. He's got one great line in the movie that if we say on YouTube, we'll be banned forever. So certain gamer
Whitey said that the way that they actually got away with it was that they were so low key. Mm-hmm. They didn't cause any trouble. the guards probably didn't even know who Frank Morris was, nor the Anglin brothers, because they were so off. They didn't want to draw any attention to themselves. They didn't try to start fights. They were very low key, and that's how they were able to pull this off, because they didn't draw attention to themselves.
Sure.
Yeah, I imagine that going and challenging the warden directly is not a good idea when you're trying to have an escape plan.
Just calling him an asshole to his face for no reason.
I hate you, warden.
I'm gonna get you one day.
Yeah. It's every prison movie trope.
Yeah.
Now, was there ever a point where they thought about having a football game against the guards?
Like sleepers.
Maybe
yeah,
a
when
baseball
Burt Reynolds
game.
showed up, that's when they had it. So
maybe a baseball game.
No,
they were very big in the baseball there.
They covered up the vent with a Raquel Welch poster.
A Raquel Welch poster, yeah. This story.
Although
had to have
one of the
inspired
things
Shawshank,
that
right?
they,
I'm sorry.
You guys go.
I was going to say that actually in Shawshank, you find out at the end of the movie that when he was chipping away at his cell, that he would, take it into the courtyard and dump his, the debris there. And actually, John would do that too. He would kind of go into the courtyard or the rec room and just kind of dump some of the debris that he was digging out.
The old Great Escape.
It's the Great Escape again with the dirt.
Yeah.
Well, they showed it in this, right?
Exactly.
They're like talking, and you see like the dust kind of kicking up. So,
I think at this point in the movie he meets the Anglin brothers.
well, he's digging with a nail filer. He already met
Played by the guy from Tremors.
Which guy?
The
Yeah,
not
I think-
Kevin
I-
Bacon guy.
Yeah, he was the guy. I think he was supposed to be Clarence.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was played as Clarence.
Well, he was also in The Right Stuff. He was
Yes,
one of
he was also in The
would
Right
play
Stuff.
Gus Grissom.
Gus Grissom.
Fred Warner.
Fred Ward.
Fred Ward.
Fred Warner. Yeah.
Fred Ward.
So, yeah, he comes up with a plan and he gets the brothers in. So they're using like a nail filer at first, but then they're like, "This is taking too long. We need bigger tools." So they steal some spoons and they like meld them together with like a candle. It's ingenious. It's like MacGyver.
Yeah.
It's like MacGyver in prison.
Well, actually, they take the spoons and they try to do it just with the end of the spoon, and John couldn't quite make enough headway, so he wound up taking and he would file the head of it off to a point, and then he tried it, but he didn't quite think it was working, so he took 3 of them together and he taped them. Believe it or not, they found inside the cell of John, some of the inventory that they found was a roll of black cloth tape that he wrapped those spoons with to create something he could hold on to. And that's how, almost kind of like a shank,
Yeah.
And that's what he used to chisel through.
Wow.
Yeah, and in the movie, Frank learns how to weld, and he gets a dime, and he's welding in his cell. Were they actually welding?
Yeah, that seems extreme.
I don't think that
Seems
was
risky.
true either. Now,
No.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible
There's
with
light.
just matches, right?
There's light, there's
Yeah.
smell. You're gonna get caught.
The level of heat you would
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, I don't think you can weld with a candle.
Yeah. Now, I do know at one time they tried an electric motor that Wes would wind up, because they actually did have an outlet in
Like a
there.
drill?
Well, they had a jack that they would use for headphones that was installed, years later after. It was there when they got there, and they would listen to baseball games and other things that the prison would allow them to listen to. But he winds up taking hot wires and wiring into it, trying to get this motor to drill holes, but it was so loud, and they wound up abandoning it. It wasn't quite what they thought it would turn out to be. So.
Actually, I just want to go back to the part, when he was welding the spoon and he talks to the old guy who says he's Al Capone, and he asks him if there's a way to do welding in the cell. And he one of the things that whenever he talks to Clint Eastwood, he's always negotiating, dessert with him.
Yes.
Hey, you owe me dessert kind of thing. And when he tells him about the dime and filing, he owes him for the rest of his time there. I'm going to get your dessert forever now. Well, that's an inaccuracy because at Alcatraz, inmates could eat as much as they wanted. They can go up for seconds or thirds as long as it was within the 20-minute period of eating.
No kidding.
And that was one of the draws for the inmates was the not only the quality of food, which was pretty good. The guards actually ate the same food as the prisoners, but they can have as much as they wanted. So there was never negotiating somebody's food from somebody else.
That's definitely a unique perk in the prison system, I would imagine.
They make it like it's just slop. They don't know what they're eating. Meanwhile,
they just had to eat fast because you only had 20 minutes.
Was definitely listed as one of the best places to have food.
That's crazy.
Do they give you any food on the tour?
Crumbs. Well, we got some bread and some water.
Do we know what the
and they did offer us soap on a rope.
That comes in handy. Right. Especially if, what's his name? Oz is around?
Exactly.
Would you ask the capacity?
Do we know the capacity of the prison? Like, how many inmates are there?
250, 260, give or take.
Yeah.
Very small.
Wasn't it something, Mike, like it was like 4-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio prisoner to guards? Yeah, I think it was something like either 3 or 4-to-1.
Are there people waiting on death row there, or no?
No,
there's no death row.
I do believe there were some life people that were serving life terms, which to me that's death row.
Yeah.
Okay, but the strange thing about Alcatraz, because it was so small, you didn't have that many people going, leaving and coming because it was so small. Not like a big, huge prison you have today, where they have people coming and going all the time, prisoners getting moved or getting out or coming in. Alcatraz was fairly small compared to any other prison.
And it's the last stop. They
say it was the last stop, and I think a lot of prisoners took that to heart, just like they took to heart, the sharks in the water. They were told this was the end of the line for you, and if Alcatraz can't correct you, I don't know what else would happen to you. I guess in their mind it was like I'm gonna be shark bait somewhere.
It's better than Azkaban. Right. I mean, you don't have to deal with Dementors.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. Good one.
Jesus Christ. We're having an adult
conversation. Well, and another thing that Whitey told me he enjoyed about Alcatraz was you had your own cell. And a lot of the other prisons you shared a cell with someone, and you were lucky if or unlucky if you ended up with Bubba.
Right.
And so having your own cell meant, you were safe from being raped at night.
Right.
We're coming to the part in the movie where it's the actual escape. But before we get into that, I just want to ask you guys about these raincoat rafts and life vests. We haven't really touched on that. So where do they come from? How do we make them? How do they know how to make them?
What's the deal with these raincoats?
We're asking for a friend. We're not.
Well, all of the raincoats we learned through the FBI files were given to them by other prisoners. So, they did have a way of, they had a clothing room, which actually John worked in. And anytime you needed to exchange clothes, something got tore or whatever, you would go and exchange clothes and get new clothes. And it was the same way with raincoats. But yeah, that is actually how they did it. I believe it was Frank Morris, either Frank Morris or one of the Anglin brothers that obtained a Popular Mechanics.
That was Frank. Frank got the magazine.
Mm-hmm. And in there, it told about how to make a boat or a raft and life preservers using pretty much the same materials as a raincoat.
No kidding.
And then John and them learned. John and Clarence are the ones who sewed them together, and then they would put. They actually had cement glue. Where they get this from, we tell in the book, because we found out later on who supplied this to them. And they would use the hot water vents or pipes, and they would vulcanize, they would melt them together. And that's what created this seam that would seal it in. And it was actually so well constructed that when the FBI found the other vest and the other boat, because they actually created 2 boats, 2 rafts, and they inflated them and set weights on them, and they would hold air for hours.
Really?
So, I mean, they did a fantastic job on putting them together.
Well, it kept them alive.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
And actually, just sort of a funny story is you normally, in a given year, because they kept account of everything when they would, give it to an inmate, like, hey, my shirt's torn, I need a new shirt. They'd, write it down, they'd log it in, kind of thing. And usually in a year, you'd have like 2 or 3 raincoats that would need to be replaced. Another inmate would steal one, or they'd tear it. It was no big deal. It wasn't that high of a priority for them as far as replacing. Well, the months and weeks leading up to the escape, they noted that there was approximately 40 raincoats that needed to be weren't and it wasn't ringing any bells. It wasn't like, hey, what's going on? Why do these inmates all of a sudden need all these raincoats? And they wasn't, they weren't, alerted to that there was a problem going on. And they just
why do they need to begin with their inside?
Yeah.
Well, when they go to the yard,
in the rain,
they need their outdoor time. You got to order some executives from my friend who worked for Harry Fleming on Wall Street selling raincoats for 40 years.
Oh my God. They had nice winter coats. They had nicer winter coats than I do. They had like nice pea coats.
The pea coats were very nice. Yes. Did they really get pea coats like that?
Sure.
Yes, they did.
And beanies, and because it was
cold.
But
now here's an interesting story that's the movie portrays, but it didn't actually happen. And you'll learn some new information in our book. When they left out that night, they didn't take any of their clothes with them. They went out naked.
Really?
Why?
Yes.
Ballsy.
Why?
All their clothes, if you go and you look at the photographs of the cells the next morning, and this was something that the FBI, when they're interviewing Wes, is confused because Wes took all his clothes with him. But they were like, why did the other 3 left every bit of their clothes in the cell, and you took yours with you? Which is another indication that Wes was not a part of this original. Well, he was a part of the original plan, but he wasn't a part of the plan when it changed, because he was like, well, I didn't know that there was any other clothes, but there was. And so we talk about this in the book. The book is going to really open the eyes of a lot of people about some things that they didn't even know occurred. So.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. One of the things, when you watch the movie, the night of the escape, it's very dark, it's very quiet. Nobody knows what's going on except for the 3, well, actually 4, but the 3 that are getting out of their cells and, climbing to the roof and making it to the water. Well, in actuality, a number of the inmates knew about the escape ahead of time because they needed materials. They needed some help from the other inmates, like the raincoats, for example. And Whitey Bulger tells this in one of the letters. And there's another inmate, Scheiblein, who was friends with the brothers. He sort of helped a little bit with their plans in the escape, but he wasn't in the inner circle. And he kind of tells the same story, that the night of the escape, that they were wide awake, very nervous because the brothers had said their goodbyes the last couple of days, like, hey, we're leaving tonight or we're leaving tomorrow night kind of thing. So they knew they were going to go, and they were waiting for the guards to find them. And if they had been caught, they would have been killed because guards had orders of shoot to kill if you were trying to get out. So they knew their chances of survival were not good. And when they were trying to get onto the roof, there's a big steel covering on the air vent that John pushed over, and it landed on the roof with a big thud. And there's a whole bunch of seagulls on the top of the cell block that flew off and started squawking, making all this noise. And both Scheiblein and Whitey Bulger both thought the brothers just got caught. And to try to distract the guards that are in the cell block, they start making noise. They start banging on the cell blocks and banging on their beds.
They get their beds and start banging on the floor.
Wow.
Right, to distract the guards. And there was a guard there named Charles.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And there was a guard there named Charles Herman. He was one of the guards. And Whitey calls him Herman the German in his letters. he sort of had this funny nickname for him. Well, he was on duty that night and he didn't do the midnight check that he was supposed to. And he later got in trouble for it and was given 30, or not given 30 days, but he was suspended for 30 days after as punishment for not doing his job. And later, Whitey was ribbing the guy mercilessly about, you're not going to make lieutenant and you have no future as a corrections officer because it was your fault they got out. Yeah, so he was really giving it to him, and he said that Charles Herman just felt terrible about feeling the responsibility of letting this happen because Whitey had tricked him by banging on his cell to distract him from what they were doing on the roof.
Yeah, Whitey said that in the letter that Mike's talking. He said he stayed awake all night long, staring up at the ceiling, just waiting for some word. Actually, what they were waiting for was the next morning when the guards found out that they had escaped, or there was an escape. And Whitey said when everything went off, all the prisoners just stood up, started cheering and hooting and hollering. They're trying to get everybody under control, and there were a lot of people who knew what was happening. And to me, that's amazing that you have that many people that knew about what was going on, but yet everybody kept their mouth shut. I mean, anybody could have turned them in. So. Yeah. I guess that to me is amazing.
Yeah, everybody's just rooting for them. I guess you want to see someone finally escape from Alcatraz if you're there, right? Almost like the symbolic gesture of it.
Yeah.
And Whitey does say that in the letter that when they got out, he said it was like we all got out.
Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense.
And that's an interesting story too, because I asked Whitey this as I was reading the account that Wes gave to the FBI, because they interviewed him that very next day. And then they interviewed him again. And the reason it looks like there were two interviews is because he says the same thing. He changes it up just a slight little bit. But I asked Whitey, I said, okay, was so many people cheering on, them to escape? I said, what would have happened to Wes if he had turned them in, told the FBI the route they were taking, what happened, and I said, what would happen to him? And Whitey said he would have lived about 2 minutes when he stepped in the yard. We would have killed him. And he said Wes told them exactly what we told him to tell.
So that right there lends credence to the idea that what we see in the film and what Mr. West said to the FBI is a complete lie.
Stop and think about it. So if you wanted to go south, wouldn't you want the authorities to believe you went north?
Right. So what would you say is the real route? Well, what happened afterward?
Well, real quick before we get there, I'm sorry. Before we get there, let's get there chronologically in the movie.
We kind of
in the movie, the gay dude escapes. He goes to kill him. English stops him, and then the guys escape.
Let's talk about the real thing.
Right. So when they escape, they say they had 9-hour head start before they even started looking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the time frame when they found out they escaped, and so is that kind of like an accurate portrayal? Like they escaped, and then there was a 9-hour window before the search even started.
So this is where in the book we start diverging from the common stories about Alcatraz, because if you've seen documentaries, you've read books, a lot of what they talk about are the tides in San Francisco Bay, which are notorious. The tides are very fast when the water's going out from the bay to the Pacific Ocean through the Golden Gate. And that is absolutely true. If they had tried to, they did have their raft, and if they had tried to paddle toward either San Francisco or Angel Island, there was a good chance they would have been swept out into the bay.
Yep.
But that's not what they did. And this is where our book takes a very definite turn as to what really happened. And we have a number of corroborating pieces of evidence that all say the same thing, that they didn't actually paddle to freedom.
Nope.
What they did was every day that there were the transport boats. If you ever go to Alcatraz, visit it today, you get on the boat, they take you to the dock that's on the southeastern side of the island. It's the same one they had back at the, when the prison was open, and there were transports out, and they went out at certain times, and everyone knew what times they came and went. They were bringing supplies, they were bringing inmates, they were bringing guards or their families or dignitaries or whatever. Kids, they had a set schedule. Well, there was a boat that left at 11:15 that night. Every night went back to the pier in San Francisco. And what the brothers had done was they had stolen a 125-foot extension cord. And they paddled to the dock where the transport was about to leave soon. And they tied the extension cord to the boat. And then they paddled back a little bit. And the pier is about 10 feet above the water. It's not, the boat's on the water. The piers are very high compared to where the water.
You can't even be seen by them.
Yeah, you can't see. It's dark. It's nighttime. And there was a light fog that night. So even if, starlight, moonlight was covered by the fog. So it was even darker than usual. And the guy gets on the boat. And these boats are big. They are big. They're like tugboats. They're very powerful boats. And so the engines are very, very loud. And the guy, is going toward the dock, and he's pulling the three in their raft into the bay. That's how they got across the bay. And because
actually, they only had to go halfway.
Yeah, they only went halfway into the bay. Well, waiting in the middle of the bay was a boat to pick them up.
Mm-hmm. So there's an accomplice on the outside?
Yes,
and on the inside, and outside.
Yeah, inside and outside.
Yeah, and that is a whole nother story about who helped them on the inside, who helped, and even in the FBI report, they said that the only way that they could have gotten out was that there was somebody in the prison who was released, who set things up for them and made it possible for them to escape. And we're not going to say what happened because you got to read the book to find out.
Understood.
But that is a whole nother story that is just amazing. And we have documentation for what we're claiming.
So in 2022, Mike and I teamed up with Josh Gates on the Expedition Unknown, and we actually reenacted this boat pool. Me, Josh, and a former FBI agent, he agreed to play Frank Morris. We stuck him in the rear. Because the two brothers were up front, sure. we got 2 stars.
The real heroes.
The real heroes. And so we had a boat, and this pool that we did, there were 6-foot waves out in the bay that day. I mean, oh my gosh, unbelievable. I thought we were going to die.
Wow.
Choppy, and terrible weather.
We got pulled all the way across, never had a problem, never, and if we were able to do that with that kind of seas, and this is at night and it's calm because you can read the accounts. It was very calm that night. The current was very strong, but still it was they only had to go halfway. And actually just tip around the island and then let go. And the current would have taken them the rest of the way, all the way to the boat that was waiting halfway in between Marina Green and San Francisco and the island. So, I mean, it was actually a piece of cake. Now, I've actually done the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon, and I've swam that.
No kidding.
I mean, and they let all the swimmers off that exact same point. And the reason why they do it is because if they let them off below the island, you would never make it to the mainland, even swimming, before you got pulled out into up under San Francisco. So letting them out or letting us out when we did the swim right at that point is key, because with the current pulling you, you can swim it easy. So if I'm able to swim it, I can guarantee you they could do it with a boat and paddles. So,
wow, it's truly a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Just let's guess a little bit. What do you think? They went to Mexico?
I mean, I've read part of the book, so
Well, I would say Mexico was a stopover.
Yeah.
Okay. Without giving it away, I'm sure the book will elaborate on that.
Yes.
The book is called Alcatraz: The Last Escape. Where can people pick this up?
You can get it off of Amazon. If you go out to Amazon and you search for it, it'll come up. You can also buy it from Barnes and Nobles. There is one other
Well, there are a number of other outlets, but those are the two main ones. There's also an audiobook. Tantor Media has an audiobook as well that's coming out.
But it's on the audiobook?
It's on the Amazon page. It's linked to the Amazon page. You just click audio and it takes you right there.
Who read the audiobook? I'm a big audiobook guy.
The guy who they hired to do the audio, we had an opportunity to listen to him, actually to a couple of people, but we picked him. And, even though I have access to all the books and I know the story, I'm planning on purchasing the audio because I love the way this guy talks. I wish I had that kind of voice. It was like crazy. I was like, this guy is definitely a professional.
So what we like to do at the end of our shows is we rate the movie from a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the best. How do you guys feel about the film?
The film itself, I would give it definitely a 10.
Really?
Only because I love the movie. I love all of Clint Eastwood's movies to begin with.
Hell yeah.
As far as it being, now, if you were asking me how would I rate it on the accuracy, I would probably give it a -1.
Mike?
I like the movie a lot. It's a tense movie. I like the soundtrack that mixes with it, that builds the tension. Clint Eastwood is pairing off with the warden, who's he's the villain. He's not really a villainous character. He's just kind of cold and calculating, and there's a lot of hubris behind him about no one will ever escape from it. They had that talk at the beginning of the movie. That no one gets out, and you think you're smarter than me, but you're not, kind of a thing. And so he's, it's like these two guys are kind of going mano a mano in a way. And then of course at the end, Clint Eastwood has the upper hand, and they sort of intimate that they escape when he finds the chrysanthemum on the beach of Angel Island.
Yeah, exactly.
Suggesting they escape.
Doc.
So
for Doc.
I thought they did a good job technically making the movie and building the tension, and you're really nervous when they're trying to get out, and are they going to make it? Are they going to get caught? And so film wise, like Ken said, I thought he did a masterful job. I give it like an 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the accuracy part is not as close as we would have liked, but it's still, and the one nice benefit for the movie, someone with the star power of Clint Eastwood, made Alcatraz much more accessible to people. And to this day, it's a story that people are fascinated by. People love a good mystery that wants to be solved. And we think we've solved it. We think we cracked the case, and, you can read for yourself and make your own decision. It's, it's up to you. But, Ken and I are still continuing. We're not done with the story. We want to find the family now and see where they are and connect with them. And wouldn't that be a moment when we told the world, like, hey, we found the family?
Do you think that the kids would know?
I'm sure they would.
Ooh, that's a good question. I asked my mom that same question. Would John and Clarence have told their children and or grandchildren about what happened to who they really were? My mom doesn't believe that they would have told them, but I don't know. At some point in time, I'm sure they felt like no one's going to come get us now.
After like 40 years.
It's 60 years. No one's coming for us.
Well, I'll answer the question. I'll answer the question this way. A couple of years ago, there was a guy, 40 years before, it was 50 years before, it was in the 60s or 60s or early 70s. He robs a bank. Mm-hmm. This young kid, he was in his early 20s, robs a bank, gets a couple $100,000. And then he goes into hiding. He changes his identity, moves to another part of the country, starts his life over, marries, has children, becomes a pillar of the community. And nobody knew who this guy was and what he had done. And just before he dies, he tells his family, oh, this isn't my real name. This is what I did. I've been hiding all this time. And then, of course, it became a news story. They told the news outlets about it. And so he kept it from him until just before he died. So it's likely the brothers may have done the same thing, that they did, they changed their names where they ended up going to, you're not going to keep their names.
Was there ever
probably at some point, maybe a deathbed confession? Oh, by the way, I'm really Clarence Anglin, just want to let you know.
But now you do know that, because if you watch the History Channel documentary that I did, and the show that we did with Josh, you know that we produced a photo of them on their farm in anywhere between 1970 and 1975, and it's been facial recognition to death by 5 independent groups, 1 U.S. Marshal and 1 FBI guy, and they all come back with the exact same that is John Englund in that photo.
Was there ever an attempt?
No doubt whatsoever. That proves they made it right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there ever an attempt, you think, to maybe one of them to contact your parents or your family at all?
They had been in contact with the family all this time. There was in the book. You'll learn which of the family members kept them informed of everything that was going on and how they communicated with each other. But yeah, and you know the story. I don't know if you ever heard this story about them, that during my grandmother's funeral, that they supposedly showed up to the funeral dressed as women, cross-dressers. I didn't know if you knew that.
No.
But you know, for the longest time, I was there at the funeral. I was a little kid. I don't really remember seeing
those are ugly women.
They look like guys, but
they just look really good,
you know. But you know, later on, we did find in the FBI files and some of the photos that they discovered in the Bay. There is the very last photo that's listed on the inventory. This is how they list it. There's a girl standing beside a car, and then on the back it says, "This is Alfred." Their other brother. So undoubtedly they had done this before. You know, this wasn't something new that they had done. Just like the dummy heads, they undoubtedly had, you know, dressed up as women before. Maybe that's how they broke into places or got away. They
Big
disguised
Bugs
themselves
Bunny fans.
as ladies. Yeah,
there you go.
So you know they were setting trends and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Trendsetters.
Ahead of the time.
Way ahead.
So we got to rate this movie ourselves. I'll go first. I'm going to give it a 7.5.
7.5.
I think Clint Eastwood is always watchable.
Yeah.
I think the movie is maybe just a tad bit too slow, but the escape is cool. The story is fun. You know, prison stories, they kind of all have kind of certain tropes they all hit. There's always an asshole warden, you know. There's always like the prisoner that you feel bad where shit goes wrong for him. But I enjoy the movie. I would definitely watch it again for a third time.
I think I'm gonna go with Mike. I'm giving it an 8. I think it's a very entertaining movie. It's extremely well acted. It's exciting. But I'm taking the 2 points off for the accuracy, like you said.
Exactly.
After hearing about some of the past of these individuals, I would have loved to see that in the movie. Like I would have loved to see them building those character traits and skills as kids and using them to escape. I think that would have been a lot better put in the film as opposed to, like you said, the slow kind of drawn out. So I took a little bit off for that. I did it 6.5.
Okay.
After hearing that, I'm like, no, I wanted that. I wanted to see that. You know, like
I agree.
Yeah, but you have to remember, it's a Clint Eastwood movie.
Right.
And Clint Eastwood is the star. He doesn't share the spotlight very well.
But that's what Richard Tuggle told me. He said I had one actor. I had to pick one of the 3 to be the star.
And it's one of the best you can get for something like this too,
especially back then.
He's always a presence, you know. Who doesn't love watching Clint? Well, Mike and Ken, thank you guys so much. The book again, one last time, Steve, could I have it?
Sure.
Is Alcatraz: The Last Escape. Go pick it up, get the audio book, check it out, find all the information, which we're not going to disclose here. Do you guys have any social media or anything you want to plug beyond the book?
Mike?
Well, we have our Facebook page, Alcatraz Escape, and we have our website. It's Alcatraz Family Secrets.
All right.
I'll leave you with one thing that the readers, when they go to get the book, The Last Escape is not referring to Alcatraz.
Okay. I like that.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, guys.
They escape and they do it again.
They do it again.
They go, you know what? We didn't like it the first time. Let's go back and redo it.
All right.
Let's get a do-over.
Yeah, they broke back in with Sean Connery, and then they broke back out.
Ed Harris was there, yeah.
That's right. They had this biometric gel stuff. And,
but that is true. That is true. The Last Escape is not Alcatraz.
Okay. I'm excited to keep going with the book.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it. But I want to give a big thank you to everybody listening and or watching. Please like, subscribe, check the show out on all social media, Review History Pod on Twitter, Reviewing History Pod everywhere else. Thank you to Tom, Steve, Dave, Brywalt, Q, Get 'em, last record down in the studio. We greatly appreciate it. Give the show a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, helps potential sponsors find the show. Share it with a friend. Go to reviewinghistorypod.com, buy merch, all that good stuff. Follow me personally on all social media at Brian Rupert. That's with 2 P's. Follow me on Letterboxd. I rank review every single movie I watch, even the ones in my personal life. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.
I am the P-Man!